Card King, here I come. Hello, music fans, music collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I'm your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490am.com. Your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. Special guests on the telephone line. We have legendary singer, Grammy Hall of Famer who has sold more than 70 million albums. We welcome in the great B.J. Thomas. B.J. Brian C., honor to have you, sir.
Hey, Brian. Glad to be here, man. Glad to be here.
Man, it's an honor. I want to begin very early in your career, B.J. I read that some of your music idols growing up were, Ricky Nelson, the early soul singers. Is that true? And what was it about those performers that caught your attention early on?
Well, I think the guys that I loved, millions of other people loved also. Of course, when I was about 12, Elvis had his first record, and so I really was, thought Elvis was great. Ricky Nelson was on TV every week during those years, the 50s, and Ricky was just cool. He had a lot going for him, of course, and the millions of people loved him, and I was just one of them. But I noticed early on, I always was into music ever since I was like an infant almost. And I noticed, or at least I was attracted to the black entertainers, singers, and writers when I was around 12 or 13 years old. They just, I think that music was some of the best of any generation, the 60s and 70s, and I just felt like the black guys were doing it. Jackie Wilson, Bobby Bland, Ray Charles, those guys were like the epitome for me. And then when I had my first band when I was 15, that's what we did. We did R&B music, Ray Charles, Bobby Bland, and that was the music that we really liked.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. I mean, by the age of 15, you were already performing, and by the age of 18, you were playing in your first band. Is that correct? It was a garage band?
Well, yeah, we formed the band. We were all 15 years old, and I had always been singing. I mean, I sang in church, and, I was the kind of the youth choir, youth song leader, and, excuse me, and like that, so I always was into music pretty heavily. But I got my first band when I was 15 with some friends of my brothers, and of course we're all still friends today. Those of us that are left, and we had a garage band. It was kind of right at the inception of Top 40 radio, and we would do that Top 40 chart for our song list and our dances and things, and that's how it got started.
And, B.J., I have to ask you, how did you develop your voice? Were you taking voice classes? Was it a natural, God-given ability that developed with time? Because, you have one of the best male voices of all time.
No, have.
Yeah, no, you have one of the best voices. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to be funny, but that probably wasn't funny. But no, I just,
it was. But it's the truth.
I was just lucky, it's like a God-given thing. I sounded like everybody has their own unique sound in their throat, and I guess the sound I was born with really lended itself to music. But I kind of had that inclination when I was very young. I know when I would sing in church as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, I always felt like the melody was kind of boring, and I would always kind of change up the melody a little bit and add to it, I felt. And, I just always had those instincts, and I'm just, I think I was born into, as I said, really the greatest generation of American music, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, in my opinion, and I was just glad to be a part of that.
We're talking to the legendary B.J. Thomas. You have such an epic career, BJ. 1966, a big year for you because you recorded I'm So Lonesome I Can Cry, which hit nationally #1 on the charts. And I read it was the program director at KILT who saw potential of that song and gave it airplay. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There was another DJ that played it early on, a guy named Joe Ford. But this guy was the program director for KILT. Bob White was his name, and I pretty much knew all the disc jockeys personally, and they knew me because I'd always come by and visit the stations and bring them my music. So I had taken a record in that morning to Bob and Mr. White, and I played it for him, and he didn't really like it. He said, B, I don't think we can play this one. But he said, while you're here, let's listen to the other side. And I'm So Lonesome was the other side that I basically had just recorded for my dad for the B side, and because we had no idea what a hit record was, and anyway he loved it, and he listened to a couple of verses, and he took it right in, and the DJ started playing it, and it went #1 in 3 weeks in Houston, and Scepter Records out of New York City picked it up nationally, and I was with Scepter Records for quite a few years, and they were a great independent label out of New York City.
Now I'm gonna move forward a little bit, BJ. In 2014, National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences inducted "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head" into the Grammy Hall of Fame. I wanted to congratulate you for that. And over the past 50 years, you've performed this song thousands of times. You ever get a little bit of tired of performing the same song? Do you have to find different meaning when you're performing that song?
Well, let me also include Burt Bacharach and Hal David. Burt Bacharach, Hal David, and myself and the record went into the Grammy Hall of Fame together. So, of course, Mr. Bacharach was the composer of the music, and Hal David wrote the lyrics. I don't really get tired of doing Raindrops or any of my hit records, really, but I have a lot. I'm like anybody else. I have a lot of memories tied to those songs, and I never have gotten tired of doing Raindrops. It always kind of brings back some wonderful memories for me, and the song makes me feel good. I feel good when I sing it. I'm very proud to have been connected to it. So I don't have that. I know a lot of my peers, they get tired of this song or that song, but I never have had that problem.
And you mentioned Burt Bacharach, one of the greatest composers of all time.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
I read that you would meet 1 or 2 times a week in his apartment in New York City while, before making the song. You have any memories you can share with us of you and Burt Bacharach back in his apartment in New York City?
Yeah, sure. I was recording in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, and I was doing well there. I was making hit records, and Scepter asked me to move to New York. Me and Gloria, we had just gotten married, so I moved to New York, and the reason I moved was they wanted me to start working with Mr. Bacharach, and I did. And as you said, I would go by his apartment, and we were just looking for a material. He was looking for a song that would fit me well, and we were just investigating that sound and kind of studying each other. And of course, that's when Raindrops came up right after I had Hooked on a Feeling, and we were working together. So he gave me a shot at it, and that was a wonderful experience.
Now, I want to play a couple of minutes. We have a quick mix of a couple of your songs, and I want to air it for the audience, and we can discuss.
Okay.
Sean, let's play the great B.J. Thomas.
It's lonely out tonight, and the feeling just got right for a brand new love song. Somebody done somebody wrong song. won't you play another somebody done somebody wrong song and make me feel at home while I miss my baby, while I miss my baby. So play for me a sad melody, so sad. Raindrops keep falling on my head, but that doesn't mean my eyes will soon be turning red. The cry is not for me, 'cause I'm never gonna stop the rain by complaining, because I'm free. Nothing's worrying me. It won't be long till happiness steps up. Up in wild desire, I wanna hold you till the break of day. I wanna take your every breath away. Give me one chance, I'm gonna take it. Give me your heart, baby, I'll never break it. Something that feels this right just couldn't be wrong. Hard to hold back the way this body's aching, just thinking about all the love we could be making. I wanna jump right in it, in a midnight minute. Let's take a midnight minute, make it all night long.
And you just heard a quick mix of the great legendary B.J. Thomas, and with us is B.J. Thomas. Great stuff,
Man,
B.J.
I think some of those
The first song we heard, another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song, released in 1975. Give us a little history of that song, how it was created, and how was it originated?
Yeah, I cut that song with the same guys that I recorded Hooked on a Feeling and Just Can't Help Believing, and some of those songs with out of Memphis, and they had relocated to Nashville. And I had been recording in New York for a while. I recorded Rock and Roll Lullaby and certain things in New York, but I really kind of felt like I should go back and cut with my guys. They were kind of like my band, really. And Chips Moman and the American Studio Group, and I went down, we cut an album, and, when we finished the album, we played it back, and we didn't hear a hit record, We said, well, we're not sure if we had a hit record. And the organ player, a guy named Bobby Emmons, asked Chips to play me. Chips had just written a song with Larry Butler, and he said, Chips, play B.J. that song. And he did, and it was Wrong Song. And we were really, it was obviously a hit record when we listened to it and we recorded it. And, that was a number one record for me and one of my most popular songs, I guess.
Yeah, and we spoke a little bit about the Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and this year marks the 50th anniversary, right? Yeah, 50 years ago, and then this year marks the 45th year since Wrong Song. Yeah, the Raindrops experience was incredible. Also my buddy Steve Tyrell had a lot to do with me getting that chance with Burt. He worked in my favor, and also he was with Scepter Records, and of course he's a great singer now. But back then he was a promotion man, an A&R director, and he was instrumental in getting Scepter to sign me with I'm So Lonesome. So that whole Raindrops experience was just wonderful. I don't think there was a negative thing about it. Everything worked out so well. And the third song that I chose, I mean, you have such a long, collection of music. The third song that I chose was Midnight Minute, because it was an album in which you have mentioned in the past that it was probably the best album you ever did. Do you still feel that way? Well,
I still think it's one of my best albums, although it wasn't a successful album, but I do think it's one of my better things. I did that with Stephen Dorff and John Bettis, in out in L.A. and nothing really came of it, but it kind of slipped through the cracks. Country music was becoming so huge when I cut that, and of course this thing was obviously a pop record, but I do think it's one of the best things I've done.
Yeah, and BJ, I tell you, my personal favorite song of yours is a song you did in 2000, What's Forever For? I mean, that's such a gorgeous, gorgeous song. Can you talk a little bit about that song?
Yeah, I was recording with some guys, and I always loved that song. And I'm trying to remember now who the writer was. A great writer. He always wrote these unique songs. And I always loved that song, and we made a pretty good record.
Yeah, I mean that's my personal favorite. Now you also you were instrumental in the opening of the show Growing Pains with the opening introduction song. Can you talk a little bit about how that gig came about, Growing Pains?
Well, I was just it was how I met Steve Dorff and John Bettis. I got a telephone call, and they said they were writing a theme song for a TV pilot, which turned out to be Growing Pains, and they said the song was turning into such a B.J. Thomas song that they wanted to know if I would do it, because if I wouldn't do it, they were going to have to change it because it just sounded like me. And, hey, I was thrilled with that. I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And no one really expected the show to be that successful, but, it did. It broke out the first night it shown. It was the most viewed show in New York City, and it just had a great run. It had some great characters in it and great stories, and that song was really a good song. And, it had a real good success, probably the most airplay I've ever had on anything right up next to Raindrops, because it was in syndication and played all over the world. So that was fun too.
Man, and I saw an interview you did. It was in New York City. I think the show was called Profiles. And you mentioned, and I quote, you said that you technically was never a great singer or great musician, that you felt that you technically was never a great singer or great musician. Is that correct to say? You mentioned that in the interview.
Well, I probably was I referring to just some instrument or something?
I guess they were talking about your career. You never felt, but I mean, I got to read some of your accomplishments here. 5-time Grammy Award winner, Grammy Hall of Fame inductee, sold over 70 million albums worldwide, a total of 8 #1 hits, 26 top 10 singles throughout 50 years in the music business. And you're one of the most played musicians in radio history. I mean, that is a dominating career.
Well, I have been so lucky, Brian. I somehow it worked out where I worked with the great writers of my time, not only Bacharach and David, but Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil and Mark James, and just a lot of great writers, and I was very fortunate in that way. And also I got to record with, of course, Raindrops was with one of the greatest orchestras of New York City, and I worked with the American Studio Group in Memphis, Tennessee. They were also the guys that did the comeback records on Elvis. And so, I was very, very fortunate in my career. I count myself, very blessed in that way.
And I recently took a look at your Facebook page. There's a nice video of you in the, I believe, late 70s. You and the great Kenny Rogers. May he rest in peace. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with Kenny Rogers?
Well, I knew Kenny even when I was in high school. We were buddies. He was a little older than me, but I knew him for years and years back when he first started. When he was kind of a jazz, bass player with the Bobby Doyle Trio in Houston, Texas, and at that the situation you mentioned there was I think he had a show called Rolling on the River up in Canada, with the first edition, and I went up there and did that TV show, and we did a couple of duets. You know, hey, he was really a great guy, and he was a very good businessman, a very astute musician and singer. You know, so I admired him a great deal. We were good friends, and I really miss that guy.
And just a quick question on Elvis Presley. Did you meet Elvis?
Yeah, I was around Elvis a few times, and I sang at a Valentine's party for Elvis, and I think Elvis liked me a little bit because I had one of my records was a song called Mama, and you know it's legendary how he loved his mother. Of course, we all loved our mothers, and but he was a great guy, and you know I think all the hits I was making out of American studio was one of the reasons that he finally came into American there in Memphis, and it turned into his comeback records. And he was a wonderful guy, a beautiful guy, and had of course the most amazing career of anyone, I guess, except the Beatles. But he was the man.
Amazing. So I have a couple of minutes left. So what's on your agenda? I read a post in 2021. You're going to be doing some shows with Mary Wilson.
Yeah, Mary and I are going out on the road together, and I'm really looking forward to that because I've known her for many, many years. And of course, she's a wonderful member of the Supremes and just a great artist. Well, I had a recording session scheduled for July 15th. In Muscle Shoals, Alabama, that of course we had to postpone because of the pandemic. And I'm going in the studio with Dan Penn and Billy Lawson, the great songwriters. And anyway, we had to postpone it, but we're still all in on that. And we're gonna as soon as we get the vaccine and we get to where we can be a little more free, we're gonna go in the studio and cut some new music. And you know, we're always up to something. I have a great road band, and we love to perform live. I do about anywhere from 60 to 80 shows a year, and so I can't wait to get back to that.
Yeah, and your website is bjthomas.com, bjthomas.com, and you have a lot of cool merchandise on that site, BJ. A lot of some of your early recordings with your signature on it. You want to talk a little bit about some of the merchandise where the audience listening to the program can go on and purchase?
Now that we've got some BJ Thomas masks, and there's the usual merchandise stuff, and I've got a pretty good Facebook page. You can find me there, and bjthomas.com will give you, when we go back on the road, it'll give you the dates and keep you up on what I'm doing.
All right. So, anything else before we say goodbye? I appreciate your time, and hopefully we could do it again.
Brian, I appreciate you talking to me, buddy. Thanks for supporting me like that. And, of course, your listeners, I want to thank them for keeping me around all this time. It's been great, and God bless everybody.
Thank you. And before I let you go, the first group that you were in, it was called the Triumphs, correct?
Yeah, it was called the Triumphs, and I think they might have just retired now during the pandemic, but I was still doing one or two shows with them every year, charity shows and things like that. We're still great friends, and they were a great band.
And that's why I was going to ask you if they're still performing.
I think that they just recently, because of the pandemic and some of the guys, of course, we're older now, and they've had some health problems, and I'm not sure they're gonna do it anymore. But I am. I'm going to be on the road as soon as I can.
Well, BJ, thank you so much, and let's keep in touch. Really an honor to speak to you. You're one of my favorite singers, one of the best voices of all time.
Man, I appreciate you saying that, buddy, and thank you very much. It's been great talking to you, Brian. All the best, but take care.
Take care of yourself. That was the legendary B.J. Thomas, and the website is bjthomas.com.
BJThomas.com. He's got a great Facebook page as well, BJ Thomas Facebook. You can see some of the early videos he did. Great video, as we spoke about, with actually late 1970s with the great Kenny Rogers. So really one of the true best voices of all time. Honor to speak with him. BJThomas.com. I thank everyone for tuning in. Until next week, happy collecting to all.